Baltimore Ravens won a football game, and they did it in impressive fashion, but a huge story from over the weekend continues to loom large. John Harbaugh broke his silence on the matter. We talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here on this Victory Monday. Man, that feels so good to say on this Victory Monday, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Thank you out there to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Of course, thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen today and a part of your day in general. For 5 days a week plus more here with daily Ravens coverage and content. We have a jam-packed episode today, as we always do on this show. Again, the Ravens, they beat the Chicago Bears in week number 8 in impressive fashion. We're going to talk about the game throughout the show, but we do have to also talk about the situation that happened over the weekend. We talked about it a bit on a bonus episode, our pregame episode earlier yesterday morning. But obviously that being Lamar Jackson's change in injury status. John Harbaugh broke his silence on the situation. We'll talk about that as well as Tyler Huntley and what he was able to do with this Ravens offense in the first part of the show. We'll also dive into a possible punishment for the Ravens being revealed, what they could be looking at if this does escalate. And then finally, we'll do a whole Ravens and Bears recap from Sunday, from yesterday, talking offense, defense, special teams, what I think is a very complete win that we all witnessed at M&T Bank Stadium. I want to tell everybody first, today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, the Ravens found themselves in pretty hot water after Saturday's change in Lamar Jackson's practice status. For those who don't know, or just to summarize the situation, Lamar Jackson, ahead of the Chicago game in week 8, which the Ravens won anyway without Lamar, he was listed as a full participant on Friday, which generally signals, doesn't all the time, right? Doesn't all the time, but generally signals that, guys on track to play. Seemed like there were some reports that were indicating that as well. But then there was a report by Ian Rappaport on Saturday morning that essentially said that Lamar Jackson took his reps with the scout team. And, that essentially kind of looked like a guy who does that when you take reps on the scout team, that, you're probably going to miss the game. And so a couple hours later, the Ravens released a statement, and that statement essentially declared Lamar out for the game and also said that they had reflected Lamar's practice status to be accurate, downgrading him from full to limited. Now, this was massive news, caused massive eruption across the sports world. It became a national headline. And the Ravens ended up having to release a statement on it a couple of hours later saying, quote, Lamar Jackson was present for and participated fully in our entire Friday practice ahead of Sunday's game against the Bears. But on further evaluation today and after conferring with the league office, because Lamar didn't take starter reps in practice, we updated our report to reflect his practice participation. Now, of course, Lamar doesn't play in this game. Tyler Huntley, he balled out, absolutely balled out against Chicago. I mean, just the stats for Tyler, 17 to 22, 186 yards, 1 touchdown on the day. Also ran the ball 8 times for 53 yards. I'll do it again. Tyler Huntley gets a round of applause from me. Round of applause for Tyler Huntley for what he was able to do out there on that football field. And we'll get to Tyler a little bit as the show continues. But after the game, John Harbaugh, he broke his silence on the entire situation. And his answer was sort of interesting, to say the least. I think that, there were some things you can kind of take away from it, but others you're just kind of wondering, like, what in the world? So he kind of was asked about, we were unclear on the role that he couldn't be listed, or what was it? And John Harbaugh said, quote, yes, well, the status was pretty much the status all the way through. We were hoping he could play today. We weren't going to rule him out before we had to. I think at the end of the day, the conversations that we were had, they just didn't feel like the 2 games in 5 days would be the thing to do. That comes back to us. And when you hear that as a coach, that's what you do. So with him not practicing with the first offense throughout the week, it's just us getting Tyler ready to go. And we're going to play football with Tyler. And if Lamar would have come back, if it could have happened as a coach, I would have put him in there. And Tyler, you would have understood that, right? That would have been the way we would have gone, but he didn't get to the point where I think they felt comfortable with that part of it. The other part of it, I'm not involved in those rules. I don't know those particular rules. I think in their defense, he practiced a full practice. I think they felt like because he did the same number of reps as he usually does, it was a full practice. When you dig in and you read the rule, at the end of the day, it wasn't right. So that's what it was. That's why as soon as we found out, we changed it. Okay. Well, that was a long answer. I have a hard time believing. All right. I know it's what John Harbaugh said, but I have a hard time believing that John Harbaugh doesn't know those rules. He's been in the league for 18 seasons. He's been 18 years as a head coach, and he doesn't know practice rules. I mean, look, either any way you spin this, it's a massive blemish on the Ravens, right? If this was intentional, if it was not intentional, if it was intentional and you're trying to deceive Chicago, that's just really bad. But if you seriously didn't know the rules, that's also really, really bad. Like, either way, you're not coming out of this on top. And so the media clarified. They're like, wait, you said they. Who is they? And John Harbaugh said that's in the training room and the PR staff on the other side. It's not on the football side. It was on the medical side, but it's an honest mistake. It really is an honest mistake. I can tell you this. Nobody is trying to hide anything. There was no advantage to be gained with that. Lamar Jackson practiced and his status was what it was. He was questionable. I do think if we'd had our old status, maybe they would have said doubtful, maybe, I don't know, but questionable or out. We weren't going to say out because he wasn't out until Saturday when that conversation was had on the medical side. And I'd have a much easier time believing this personally if, the Ravens didn't try to get every little advantage they could. And this was, I'd have an easier time believing it if it was the first time something, this is all new, but like they've had issues with disclosing statuses or weird timelines or whatnot. I don't know what is going on here, but it's bad because it is something where this is not over yet. The Ravens had a great win yesterday, and, some of that was overshadowed by this situation that is going to continue to overshadow them. I'm sure John Harbaugh will be asked about it again tomorrow in some way, shape, or form. The Ravens will probably get punished by the NFL for this and for a couple of different reasons, which we'll talk about in the second part of the show. Now, how severe that punishment will or would be if they do get punished, we'll dive into that. But, it's so bad. Like, it's just another blemish on a season that's gone so terribly for the Ravens so far. I think a lot of people, myself included, there was a light at the end of the tunnel after the final whistle blew against Chicago. You could finally see, like, okay, this season of horrors to start the season. This win against Chicago puts you at 2-5. The Ravens actually on FanDuel right now are favored to win the AFC North at 2-5 because the Ravens had a great day yesterday. They won and the rest of the division lost. So now the Ravens are just 2 games out of the division lead. So, you see all this stuff going on throughout the season so far. I actually put out a tweet about it on Saturday when all of this was going on. And, you had the Ravens, they had a historic collapse against the Bills in week number 1. And then you have one of the worst defenses in NFL history to start the year. You had 20-plus injured players at one point. You've been embarrassed at home 3 times. You got players leaving the locker room before the media arrives. TJ Gardner-Johnson, he signs and leaves within a week. You got multiple reports bashing Todd Monken and the team from anonymous players and team sources. You got multiple sketchy handlings of injury situations, obviously including this Lamar Jackson one. And again, it felt like with this win, you're like, okay, they're back on track here a little bit. Tyler Huntley saved their season from being over. Is the season saved in terms of like, oh, they're winning every game 100% now? Of course not. You got to play the games. But the Ravens schedule, it opens up a ton here. And despite all that, you still have the situation at hand with this whole participation in practice. And Jonathan Jones, he tweeted out the NFL's injury policy fairly explicitly accounts for the scenario the Ravens found themselves in on Friday. And that says, quote, participation on the scout team, no matter how extensive by a player whose normal repetitions would be with the starters, but for his medical condition would not alter the player's proper designation as limited participation. And then there was another thing in that same vein put out about the other part of this, which says, quote, the NFL's injury report policy is clear. A player who participates in individual drills, but for medical reasons doesn't take his normal repetitions during the team portion of practice and is assigned to the scout team should be listed as limited participation. And like, why would you as a coach not know or understand that? And, even if you want to delegate that out to what John Harbaugh said in the medical and PR, like, shouldn't they be in communication first and be like, hey, this is what happened, and this is the rule? Or maybe they didn't know the rule, but then why wouldn't they know the rule? Like there's so many things that go into this thing right now. I don't know how it's going to end, but the Ravens, they're going to have to try to tune it out as best they can, because when Lamar comes back, he's going to be asked about it. Like that's something he's going to have to tune out. Harbaugh's going to continue to be asked about it as well. And the Ravens could possibly be facing some punishment for this. So coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk about what that could be, because it is possible it could be very light, or if stuff is found out, could be a very heavy punishment. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I've been using PrizePicks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It keeps every game exciting. I like picking my favorite players like Lamar Jackson and Nikola Jokic to see how my predictions play out. The new Stacks feature is a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph Curry's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves my lineups from a loss. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. And this show is brought to you by Rugiet. Let's be real, making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. When it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED, designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rugiet makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor, 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. And it's about confidence, connection, and getting back to moments that matter. Visit rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL to get 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNFL so they know we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. Moving along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you talking Ravens football. Ravens pick up a huge win against the Bears in Week 8. It was glorious. Offense, defense, special teams. Everybody stepped up to the plate, in my opinion. There are certainly still things the Ravens have to work on, but they needed this win in the worst way. Appreciate everybody again for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We have that 5-day week plus more Ravens coverage for you. We have the Monday through Friday regular show here, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We have bonus episodes on the weekends when the headlines permit, and there are a lot of headlines during the season. We also have Locked On Ravens watch-alongs during the game days. So, of course, we react to every single play live here during games. And we also have the instant reaction shows where we react to the entire game in itself. We have the Locked On Ravens squad show twice a week. Myself, Sam and Njoku, and former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. So much content for you, and appreciate everybody for all your support. We just passed 16,000 subscribers in video form and in audio form. Our listener base grows every single day. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's dive into this conversation a little bit more. Again, we'll get to the game as the show goes on. But with this, the Ravens, the Lamar Jackson injury saga situation that the John Harbaugh apparently didn't know the rules about, the Ravens could potentially face some punishment for this here. And look, I wouldn't be shocked if something does come down the pipeline. How serious, I don't know. That's probably going to depend on the NFL and what they find. But so Mike Florio, Ravens fans, I know. I know. Ravens fans and Mike Florio don't get along. But Mike Florio passed along some information from what he heard, and I think it's important to at least mention it and use it as context. So Mike Florio, before the Sunday night game between the Packers and the Steelers, and want to shout out the Packers real quick for helping out the Ravens after the Ravens helped themselves out by beating the Bears. So the question essentially was, what's going on here with Baltimore? And so Mike Florio said, when is a player who fully participated in practice not fully participated? Well, the rules been on the books for a long time. If you're a starter and you don't take all the first team reps, even if you fully participated in what Lamar Jackson did was participated on the scout team, you're limited. And the Ravens knew this and they got it wrong. He should have been listed as limited. And then he went on to say John Harbaugh told reporters it was an honest mistake, but that still sets the Ravens up for some sort of a sanction. The question is, when the league looks into this, will they determine there was some sort of an effort to conceal his true status by saying he fully participated? If they find something like that, the punishment could be worse. And for now, Ravens are looking at fines. They're looking at potential loss of draft picks. Even suspensions are on the table based upon what the NFL could find out. Now, I don't think, again, unless it's crazy what they find out, I don't think suspensions are on the table. I would probably take that off the table there. I know Mike Florio said it, but I'm just going to say, unless there is like all this stuff that comes out about the Ravens and like it's very deep rooted, I don't think anybody's getting suspended. Loss of draft pick depends what they find. I wouldn't be shocked if they lost a draft pick for this. I would assume it'd probably be a mid-round draft pick or a late-round draft pick if it's pretty egregious. Maybe it's an earlier one. I mean, if they lose a draft pick for this, I think people should be fired. Like I do. You know, that's pretty unacceptable. And I'm not talking John Harbaugh in particular for this. I mean, look, if it comes back to Harbaugh and like Harbaugh was the one, then yes, of course, like that's terrible. But you know, John Harbaugh mentioned the medical staff, PR. Like if that was a thing and those people are in on this or whatever, again, there are so many different ways this could go. I would probably assume what happens is the NFL fines the Ravens a pretty hefty amount of money. I think that's you know, for Steve Bisciotti, what is a hefty amount of money? I don't know. I mean, I think that it's going to be some decently hefty form of a fine. Florio did say, though, a source told me today that the NFL understands, given what happened in the NBA, it's very bad optics. And as the source said, it's an opportunity for the league to make a very strong statement on a very important topic. I wouldn't want the league, and look, if I was covering any team, I wouldn't want the league to make a statement just to make a statement. If there's information that comes back or if there's evidence that comes back that, you know, for lack of a better term, incriminates the Ravens on this stuff, then yeah, like it should be a pretty hefty punishment. But if it's just making a statement to make a statement and the Ravens, like it clearly was a miscommunication, if that's what it was, then I think that's wrong. It's almost like the Chiefs game last year in week 1 where Ronnie Stanley was, you know, essentially made an example out of for starting a little bit further back, and Juwan Taylor didn't get any of that treatment during that game too. Like I wouldn't want it to be that, but you know, this still is I mean, Florio's correct. It is bad optics based off what's happened in the NBA and that whole situation. And I kind of look at it like this. If the Ravens were on the other side of this and, you know, there was a player that was, you know, his practice participation was, you know, changed and it's all fishy. I mean, I'd be mad. I'd be like, man, that's crazy. What that's not fair. You know, if the Ravens were on the other side of that, I'd be like, that's not cool. So again, even if the Ravens did get caught up in an honest mistake, it is pretty big malpractice not even know those rules that apparently, according to people here, multiple people have been in the rule book for a very long time. But you know what? From a start perspective, it didn't matter, as I mentioned, because Tyler Huntley went out there and balled out. The offense did a really good job without Lamar. And obviously, you would like to have Lamar out there. And again, it's not about Lamar not playing. Like, I get it. But now there are other conversations about, like, what's the communication actually like between Lamar and the Ravens? It feels like, and I saw multiple people put this out on social media, feels like the Ravens can be scared to approach Lamar in these situations, you know, contractually and how that whole situation went, some of these injury things. And look, if Lamar didn't feel healthy enough to play, okay. Like, I don't want Lamar out there if he's not healthy enough or if he doesn't feel confident enough in his health to play. But there were other conversations I saw about, like, you know, did the Ravens bank on Lamar playing and it didn't go that way? You know, what kind of happened with that? Did the Ravens list him as full to try to kind of coax him into playing because he practiced in full? If that's the case, that's terrible. But I also saw things about, like, oh, Lamar quit on the team. I think that's ridiculous. We also saw Lamar very up and active during the game on Sunday yesterday. He was involved. He was laughing. He was supporting his teammates. I mean, you know, that whole notion to me was ridiculous from the start. There'd have to be very hard evidence for me to even believe that for a second. And even then I'd be like, this doesn't look like Lamar. Like, what's going on here? So Lamar is one of the most competitive people I have seen in sports. Like, that's just not Lamar Jackson. He's not going to quit on this team. I can't believe it. I don't believe it. So we'll have to see how the situation unfolds. But, you know, depending on what happens, there could be a decently hefty punishment coming for the Ravens if there is evidence that ties back to Baltimore, or, you know, that whole situation too could be crazy. So I don't know what's going to happen, but what I do know happened is the Ravens won that football game. And I'm really excited because I think the way that they won it gave me a lot of confidence. I talked about that a lot on the watch along and the instant reaction show and the Locked On Ravens. It's like 6 hours of content here on game days. It's a lot of talking, but it's a lot of fun. I think that what we saw from this Ravens team, minus your star quarterback, with Tyler Huntley, who that team believes in clearly. They let him go twice, but they brought him back. It was really cool to hear how Huntley values this organization and wants to be a part of this organization. He had a great game. And that's something that I think goes under the radar, not like today in particular, but Huntley as a player compared to Cooper Rush was something that obviously the Ravens didn't see early in the offseason when they signed Cooper. And there's a lot more to talk about there. So coming up in the final part of the show, we'll dive into the game as a whole, do a little recap of that Ravens and Bears game, and a lot more. Stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by Gametime. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping to checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is the price you pay. And I pulled up Gametime, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. And the app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. And I love zone deals too. You pick the section and Gametime picks the seats and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. And the show was brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. And look, I'm a Denver Nuggets guy in the NBA, a huge Denver Nuggets guy. Right now over on FanDuel for NBA championship odds, the Nuggets are just second behind the Thunder. The Thunder are plus 210, the defending champs. The Nuggets are plus 700, tied with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I like those odds for Denver. So if you feel like that's good, head on over to FanDuel. They have so many options for you over there. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Continuing on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still talking with you here after the Ravens' big Week 8 win over the Chicago Bears. Man, I'm so pumped. I'm so happy we can talk positive. It's been a tough season, all right? I know we all can relate to that. We've all been going through it together. It feels nice to see a win like they got on Sunday, talk positively about them here. I know we talked about a lot of this quote-unquote saga Lamar Jackson stuff in the first couple parts of the show, but it feels nice that we got to see this Ravens team without Lamar Jackson play up to their potential in a lot of different ways. So appreciate everybody for being here 5 days a week on Locked On Ravens. You can also follow me on social media at KShark34 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And as well, if you have a friend or family member who wants some daily Ravens coverage, be sure to send them our way because we have them covered just like we have you covered on Locked On Ravens. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form and audio form because we're the same show, both audio and video. You're not missing out on anything there show-wise. But hey, let's dive into this game. I mean, seriously, 30-16, the Ravens get the win. Again, I think that the way that they ended the game, where they consistently, rough first quarter. The Ravens ran 3 total plays in the first quarter. The Bears held the ball for about 12 and a half minutes. But then the Ravens had a great second quarter. This game was pretty even throughout, all the way through for the most part. The Ravens traded the first and second quarters with the Bears. And you actually look at the team stats, it's actually kind of crazy how similar these two teams were together. The Ravens held the ball for just 30 seconds more than the Bears did. 30-30 for the Ravens, 29-30 for the Bears. Both teams had 9 drives. Both teams averaged 6 yards per play. Both teams were pretty close in some of the yard departments as well. 372 total for the Bears, 355 for the Ravens. But where the Ravens won this game, in my opinion, three areas in one specific sequence. The areas, to me, the Bears had 11 penalties. The Ravens had just 6. So the Ravens, they did not make as many mistakes as Chicago did just in general. The Ravens also forced that big turnover from Nate Wiggins, which gets into the sequence of it being a team win. That Jordan Stout punt to the 4-yard line, Nate Wiggins interception, and Charlie Kolar touchdown, the 3 units blending in one. I absolutely loved that. I loved that from this team. And that's something I think that they need to do a lot more of moving forward. Again, it's hard to look, it's hard to blend units like that every single week. And sometimes units will have off days, like maybe the offense is off, but the defense and special teams have to carry or vice versa or whatnot. This game felt like, yeah, every unit, actually, I thought special teams played pretty perfectly for the most part, but offense and defense had some level of struggle, whether it be early or later on in the game. But man, I'll tell you what, every unit ended up bouncing back in a massive way. We talked about Tyler Huntley in his game. Again, 17 of 22, 186, 1 touchdown through the air, and then 8 for 53 on the ground. Derrick Henry had 21 for 71 and 2 scores. And while his 3.4 yards per carry is not like blowing anybody away, I still thought that he had an impact on this game. And Tyler Huntley and Derrick Henry in the backfield had that impact. Because look, Cooper Rush was not it. I talked about that all offseason. If you were with me here on Locked On Ravens, I said, hey, spend the money on a backup quarterback. I think it's a fine idea. But the Cooper Rush fit was weird. Not taking anything away from what he did in Dallas, but he just wasn't a fit for this Ravens team. He wasn't a fit for this Ravens offense. And honestly, you can make an argument if Tyler Huntley had been playing from the jump since Lamar Jackson got injured against Kansas City, Ravens maybe could have picked up an extra win or two. So it's unfortunate that they had to kind of go through that. They paid Cooper a decent amount of money to be their backup. So, is it sunken cost fallacy? I don't know. But Tyler stepped up when it mattered the most and kept this Ravens season afloat. But I loved the fact of Keaton Mitchell getting involved. Thank you. And John Harbaugh talked about after the game how one of the things that they established during the bye week is they wanted to get Keaton touches, and again, took them long enough, right? I mean, not like we've been screaming for this since week 1, but I guess better late than never. Although the fact that he was even benched or inactive the way that he was early in the season is still just absolutely horrible management by the team. Keaton, though, had 4 for 43 on the ground, 10.8 yards per carry. He was explosive every time he touched the football. And honestly, I say give him a couple more touches. I'd get him more touches next game. I'd say 5, 6, 7, get him involved a little more. I think that it will benefit everybody. Zay Flowers had a great game. He was finding the soft spots in the defense. I thought it was really impressive what he was doing. 7 for 63 on 9 targets. Next closest was Rashod Bateman with 4 targets, and he had 2 for 51. I love that the Ravens were pushing the ball down the field here too. Tyler Huntley is notoriously not a great deep ball passer, but the Ravens pushed this ball down the field a little bit, which I really liked. You had a deep shot to Rashod Bateman, Zay, Mark Andrews. He was throwing that ball down the field. And again, Huntley looks like a much better quarterback than he was even last year or 2 years ago, right? Like he has improved. So I do want to give him a shout out for that. He looked very cool, very calm, very collected. Looked like he belonged. It felt like he belonged in that moment on that stage. And Tyler Huntley now 2-0 against the Bears in his career, 2 starts, 2 wins. So Tyler Huntley likes playing the Bears, I'll tell you that much. But I need to give a shout out to the defense. I need to give a shout out to this defense. Roquan Smith in his revenge game had 12 tackles here. I talked about Wiggins and his interception. Kyle Hamilton was all over the place. But giving a round of applause to Zach Orr, and we can do it for Todd Monken too. And honestly, John Harbaugh had his guys ready to play, all right? Like, hey, we're going to criticize when criticism is due. We're going to praise when praise is due. That's what we do here on Locked On Ravens. We don't want to lean too far one way. We want to talk about the things that are happening and do it in a way that is objective. When things are going right, hey, things are going right. When things are going wrong, hey, things are going wrong. But I thought the coaching staff today had their guys ready and prepared. John Harbaugh talked about it post-game. Todd Monken's play calls were awesome throughout the game. But Zach Orr, one of the things he talked about during his Thursday press conference, and people honestly kind of clowned him for it, was the fact that they were working during the bye week on blitzes, pressuring, trying to get those things really down pat. And I thought the blitzes were Mike McDonald-esque. I mean, truly, I thought that they were absolutely unbelievable. Situationally, it made sense. The Ravens players were executing them at a high level. They were getting pressure on Caleb Williams and forcing him to make tough decisions, 2 intentional rounding calls. He was rattled in that pocket. The Ravens also did a really good job of stopping the Bears on the ground, especially on early downs. And again, the first quarter was rough for the Ravens, and there was a lot of bend, don't break. But the key was that they actually didn't break this time. The Bears had 2 drives to open this game, but they could have been up 14-0. And you kind of wonder, like, okay, here we go again. All right. But the Ravens actually held strong in the red zone, which was key. The Ravens went 3 for 6 in the red zone. You'd like to see them convert on maybe 1 or 2 more tries there, but still 50% is not terrible. The Bears, they went 1 of 3 with their opportunities there. So the Ravens defense, they stepped up when it mattered. The Bears went 6 of 13 on third down, which again is decently good for efficiency's sake. It's just under 50%. The Ravens went 4 for 10, which is 40%. But I thought that defense showed a lot of fight in this game and kind of reflected what Kyle Hamilton said during the week, where he's like, look, when you're backed into a corner, you're going to punch and do everything you can to get out of it. And I thought that's what the Ravens did. We saw Mike Green get his first sack. We saw Malaki Stark step up and make plays. Jake Hummel, Alohi Gilman, Marlon was in there making plays. I mean, Keandre Jackson on special teams. And special teams, by the way, Tyler Loop, perfect on the day again. Tyler's been great for them this season. Jordan Stout was awesome. Nick Moore was awesome. Kickoffs, he had great kickoff returns from Keaton Mitchell and Rasheen Ali. Like, everything just felt like it was flowing once that first quarter ended, and the game was 30-16. But, I think for the Ravens, it honestly felt like this was a get back on track type of win, which they needed in the worst way. So again, the Ravens right now, the division is in sight. The Steelers lose. They're 2 games within the division lead. Steelers' schedule gets tough. They play the Colts next week. They have a bunch of other tough games. One of the hardest schedules in the NFL remaining. The Ravens, one of the easiest. So there's an opportunity for the Ravens to take this momentum down to Miami on Thursday night and really get things going here. If they lose to Miami, I would be devastated and honestly pretty upset, because that Miami team, despite the fact they beat the Falcons the way they did, that team still is not good. So I need the Ravens to win that game. We all need the Ravens to win that game. Hopefully they do, but a really big win against the Bears in week number 8. That's all I have for you here today, though. I'm Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show on the web. Be sure to like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, we'll have more daily Ravens coverage for us, so be sure to stay tuned for that, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.